Hello and welcome to this brand new edition of Pulse, a show which highlights societal issues, matters which directly impact people, and tries finding solution to the pressing topics. I am Smriti Rastogi. Air pollution is an insidious killer. If you are among the 91% of the world's population who breathes air that the World Health Organization deems unsafe, then every time you inhale, microscopic particles are being drawn into your lungs. They get into the bloodstream with the possibility of causing serious illness like cancer, strokes and heart disease, stunting children's growth and development and even reducing intelligence. The sources of air pollution are multiple. Vehicular emissions, crop burning, generation of dust, particularly from construction sites, depleting tree covers and poor waste management all contribute towards the declining air quality. A study by IQ Air Visuals on world's most polluted cities 2018 in terms of PM 2.5 has identified the cities where air pollution is highest. The list is dominated by India with 22 of the worst affected 30 cities. Let us find more about this in this report.
Indian cities are reeling under multiple problems, including environmental issues. Most pressing of them all is the issue of air pollution. The poor air quality that citizens are forced to breathe, especially in the heavily polluted cities, has a detrimental impact on their health and well-being. According to the IQ Air Visuals report on World's Most Polluted Cities 2018 in terms of PM 2.5, the most polluted city is Gurugram, a financial and industrial hub of nearly 1 million people, followed by Ghaziabad at the second spot. In the top 5 most polluted cities of the world, Faisalabad of Pakistan is at the third spot. Then Faridabad at fifth spot is Bhiwadi in India, followed by Noida and Patna at 6th and 7th places respectively. Khotan in China is at the 8th position. Lucknow is at the 9th and Lahore in Pakistan is at the 10th spot. The national capital Delhi is at the 11th position in the list. While the world's most polluted countries 2018 in terms of PM 2.5 includes Bangladesh at the top spot, followed by Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, Bahrain, Mongolia, Kuwait, Nepal, UAE, Nigeria, Indonesia, and China at the 12th spot. The World Bank estimates that air pollution costs India the equivalent of 8.5% of the GDP, a huge drain on the resources. According to the World Health Organization, around 7 million people are killed every year due to air pollution. Meanwhile, the Global Burden of Disease 2017 has analyzed that every 3 minutes, a child dies in India because of inhaling toxic pollutants in the air. The data showed that in 2017, 1,95,546 children lost their lives due to air pollution-related diseases, which means that 535 deaths occurred daily on an average.
In today's episode of Pulse, we are talking about the dominant air pollution problem. How severe is the situation? Why the problem is on a rise? How the common man is bearing the brunt? And the remedial measures for battling this air pollution problem. Here I am, sitting among a few youngsters who will ask questions to the eminent panel of guests who are with us in the studio. Let me first introduce Mr. R.R. Rashmi, Distinguished Fellow, TERI, and former Special Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Dr. B. Sen Gupta, former Member Secretary, Central Pollution Control Board. Mr. Ajay Suri, Environment Activist, and Professor Randeep Guleria, Director, AIMS. I welcome you all to the show. Let me first begin the show by asking Mr. R.R. Rashmi, there is an aggravated air pollution problem in the country. According to a survey conducted by the Global Burden of Disease 2017, every 3 minutes, a child is dying in India. How alarming is the overall situation in the terms of air pollution?
See, the problem of pollution is not something which has happened only recently. There are almost 101 cities in India which have been considered severely polluted. And there is a program which Government of India has launched, a National Clean Air Program, basically to address this problem. But in different cities, the problem, the origin of the problem is different. So the components of the program which need to be launched and actually the actions which need to be taken are different in different cities. For example, in Delhi, which is the capital city, and the problem is really acute and aggravated, the problems are of the sources of pollution are different. Broadly, the source apportionment studies which is normally carried out by the pollution control boards of different states, including the Central Pollution Control Board, they all point out to some key factors in each city. For example, the way we handle our garbage. Garbage is, if it is dumped in the open and then burnt, it causes pollution.
Right.
The dust on the roads, construction activity is rampant in every city. So that also causes pollution. So how we handle our waste, whether it is solid waste, whether it is construction and demolition waste, or at times the rivers, it's not ambient air, but the rivers and the water systems also get polluted, so the effluent system. And so the ambient air, which is the major cause of concern at the moment, that gets affected by the vehicular emissions, the construction and waste, and the solid waste. How we manage our waste in the cities is of the critical concern, and so it needs to be a concerted action on all fronts.
Right.
We need to handle our waste very properly.
Dr. Sengupta, this air pollution problem, is it a seasonal phenomenon?
Yes and no both. I will say that during pre-monsoon, situation is different. During post-monsoon, situation is different. But it is very acute during the winter months.
Right.
Reason is that during winter, especially in North India, there is a very low wind speed. The wind speed goes to the calm condition when the wind speed is less than 0.5 meters per second. And also, one meteorological factors which is very important is mean mixing height. The MMD, which we call, become very low. During the daytime, if it is 1,000 meters, during night time, it became 100 meters or even low.
All right.
And that is a reason for the high level of pollution, because the pollutants cannot disperse above that MMD. And all the pollutants which are generated during daytime in the city are trapped in that boundary layer. And that is the cause of the winter months. There are very high level of air pollution. We have noticed in all North India, especially in the Ganga Basin states.
Mr. Ajay Suri, how complex is the air pollution problem, and is it an irreparable damage which has already been done to the environment?
Yes, you have experts who have already told you how complex it is. But the point which I would like to focus on is there is a kind of an unholy nexus between, if I say, inefficient administration and lack of political will, and also an intent to play the vote bank politics. You see, all these problems could have been sorted out much earlier if the players who are at the helm of the things, they could have, had they controlled the things earlier. For instance, EPCA, the Environment Protection Controlling Authority, which is a Supreme Court mandated body, which was set up in the 90s. People are now saying whether EPCA has a power or it is just a toothless tiger. Why I'm saying it is, see, the Supreme Court recently wrapped the various governments for this stubble issue. But the point is, this is something which the state government should have done on their own. A Supreme Court is basically, it doesn't have to get into how to handle your affairs, how to put your house in order.
Professor Randeep Guleria, who are at the maximum risk of the air pollution? What are the common problems associated with the air pollution problem? Because in the recent times, we have seen this aggravated problem has caused an ample amount of damage to a lot of people in the city as well as around the country.
So when you start looking at the problems of air pollution, we have what we call the high-risk groups And also we have normal individual, healthy individual who are at risk depending upon the air quality index and the degree of pollution that you go through. In Delhi or in a large number of cities in the Indo-Gangetic belt, throughout the year pollution level continues to be at a higher level. We don't really get good days throughout the year, but in winter especially, it reaches the very poor or severe range. People who are at high risk are people who have underlying respiratory problems, people with asthma, bronchitis, those who have underlying heart problems, and then the extremes of age, young children and the elderly. There's also now data which shows that pregnant women, and especially the fetus in the women, is also having effects which leads to low birth weight and changes in the fetus and the newborn baby when these women are exposed to high levels of air pollution. In the normal people, when the air pollution level goes to what we call a severe range, then a normal healthy person who's breathing air which has got which is of poor quality, they also start feeling constriction in the chest tightness, cough, a whistling sound from the chest, and that is because their airways start reacting to the high levels of pollution which is toxic, and they also start having breathing difficulties. So depending on the type of air that you have, it can affect normal people if it's very severe or if it's in the severe range, or asthmatics, people with bronchitis, heart disease, extremes of age, the elderly and the younger age group. We have studies, and we've done studies from our center also, which shows that there is a correlation between the air quality index and emergency room visits. We've just completed a study which we've done over the last 2 years, which we followed up our emergency visits, both in the children and the adult age group, of all people coming to the emergency 24/7 for the last 2 years, during the summer months, during the monsoon months, during the winter months. And then we correlated that with the air quality with where these patients were coming from. And we've found that whenever the air quality becomes bad, in the next 6 days, there is an increase in the number of patients coming with respiratory problems, both children and adults, to our emergency. This is a multi-centric study in various hospitals in Delhi. The data from AIIMS suggests that as soon as air pollution becomes bad, the admissions in our emergency increase, and some of these patients need ICU care, some of them become very sick and require to be on a ventilator. So whenever the air quality deteriorates, there is an increase in emergency visits with these people who have underlying respiratory diseases.
Right.
And what interestingly the data also showed was that even a mild increase in PM 2.5 was also associated with increased admissions. Sometimes we say that it has to go up to a very high level before the emergency, people really start coming to the emergency. But even a mild increase is reflected by increase in admissions both in the pediatric age group and the adult age group. So there is a direct link between respiratory problems and other problems and air pollution. And now there is data which is looking at neurological problems, autoimmune diseases, and heart attacks.
So also in the audience, we are joined by a few youngsters who I'm sure will be having their point of view on the subject. Any one of you who wants to share their views? Yeah, please.
In recent time, this air pollution problem has caught the public imagination. It has not been, this problem has not been restricted itself to metropolitan area, but kind of smaller cities also. There is a report by Council for Environment, Energy and Water that by the 2030, 675 million people will still be affected by air pollution. So my question is that aren't we thinking in a short-sighted nature of policy making regarding this, because National Air, this Clean Air program, it launched so late. And what we need right now is a long-term problem, because this air pollution problem, I think, is here to stay.
Mr. Rashmi?
Well, it is always good to start with something. It's never too late to start a good thing. So the fact that the National Clean Air Program has been launched, I think we should welcome it. The question is, we may have doubts about the effectiveness of the program, or we certainly, there will always be room for improvement. The general complaint is that while the program has been launched, it hasn't set a target for itself. I think the implicit target, I believe, although it hasn't been spelled out, is that it will be targeted to reduce the pollution level by 30% by the end of a particular time period. But numbers really are not that important. What is important is the package of actions. And the package of actions need to look at the source of pollution. As I was saying, essentially the problem arises because we are unable to manage our waste system. Our solid waste management in the cities is completely ineffective. Mr. Suri has pointed out to the problems in the administration. While there are ineffectiveness in the administration, but the challenge is, the problem is, the magnitude is so big that we need to effectively create systems to be able to handle this waste. We don't know how to handle the waste. Solid waste is one problem. The other problem is the vehicles. The number of vehicles is extremely large. Although I think the problem is not that acute in terms of cars, the four-wheelers, but the problem is more acute in terms of two-wheelers, whose numbers are larger than the four-wheelers, and they cause a maximum amount of pollution. Their proportion is higher. Very few people actually point out to this fact. So, but the problem, the whole issue is that we need to handle the emissions arising in the vehicle sector, and that there has to be coordinated policy there. So, we need to have a policy for handling the waste. I can either burn the waste or we can convert waste into wealth. There are many programs launched by the government, but there is no effective government and private sector participation. We need to create market mechanisms for handling the waste, solid waste. We need to have a regulatory policy for the management of pollution from the vehicles. And thirdly, the construction waste. The construction and demolition waste, in fact, there are rules already laid down by the government, but they are hardly put into effect.
Right.
But we have to think about creating wealth out of waste. Only then we can handle the waste problem in the long run and handle the pollution
And
problem.
Mr. Rashmi, as you just pointed about the transportation, the vehicular emission, that around the world we have found that maximum countries and cities are putting the emphasis on public transportation instead of private vehicles being plying on the roads. So I think that to an extent, a contributor of pollution, as you just pointed out, that vehicular emissions can be reduced by opting more towards the public transportation.
Certainly, that's something extremely desirable. And all the policy planners do point out the fact that if we want to reduce the emissions, either in pollution terms or in CO2 terms, we need to move to public transport system. It has to be effective. But it is easier said than done, because in a congested, overpopulated city, the spatial planning, the scope is very limited. In a place like Delhi, for example, you have to overhaul the entire traffic system to be able to move to an effective public transport system which has a hub and it has a network. Because ultimately, the public transport system will function effectively only when we have access to the last point. It's not enough to create just hubs. For a metro system, if you can't just create hubs unless there are last mile linkages available for the public. Only then people will actually switch over from private transport to public transport. But that is yet to be done. And that will take a lot of investment, a lot of resources, a lot of spatial planning.
Right.
So it's easier said than done. But absolutely no denying the fact that public transport is the ultimate solution, and we need to invest in effective public transport systems.
Mr. Sengupta, how far does the topography of a place contribute to the air pollution levels, considering the fact that Delhi is covered with more of the greener pastures? Then why do we see this increased air pollution problem in Delhi specific region?
As I mentioned to you that air pollution will depend upon the micrometeorological condition.
Right.
In the coastal area, why there is a less air pollution? Because there is a very strong wind, pollutants are dispersed very fast. Okay. In the coastal area, like city like Chennai or Mumbai or any coastal town or city where we can get very strong wind, and the flushing of the air with pollutants are very fast. In the landlocked area like Delhi, because the micrometeorological conditions are adverse, there are pollution, and for example NCR, there are many major sources of pollution. You see, we have to take an integrated approach to control the pollution. We have to identify all the sources. There are about 12 to 13 major sources which are polluting Delhi, not only one source. So we have to identify those sources, how much they are contributing, and then we should have a plan.
Right.
I will give you one example that nationwide problem CPCB is addressing. They have identified 104 non-attainment cities in our country. and also about 44 critically polluted area, 43 severely polluted area. So these are the areas where the CPCB and MOEF are jointly prepared the action plan to control the air and water pollution. To very specific to your question about the NCR region, we have to consider, as I mentioned, we have to take an integrated approach based upon science. The science is very important. We have to identify which source, and for that, a study which we conduct, which is known as source apportionment study, which will give you what are the pollutants, from which source, how much is pollution is coming. For example, if you take the PM 2.5, by the way, the PM 2.5 is only one pollutant. We have to consider
Sir,
all the other pollutants.
I would definitely want to ask you this question about PM 2.5, that
Yeah.
among the various types of air pollutants, why do we always point towards PM 2.5 when it comes to air pollution? What is that specific so dangerous about this PM 2.5?
PM 2.5, we have 12 parameters in our ambient air quality standard, which CPCB and MOEF have notified under the Air Pollution Control Act and EP Act 1986. Now, PM 2.5 is one pollutant which we have considered, because this is a PM 2.5 is a particles having size less than 2.5 micron, and it is going to a lower respiratory tract, and it is causing lot of health problems, and that is why Dr. Saab has explained to you. But besides PM 2.5, there are other pollutants which are very dangerous, like benzene. We have the ambient air quality standard for benzene also, and benzene level in Delhi NCR is quite high, but we are not talking about that. But we are monitoring and we know the results. But if you take at a time all the pollutants together, then it's very difficult to handle. So there is a benzene, there is a polyaromatic hydrocarbons. These two pollutants are cancer causing. These are the proof carcinogens, and these are present in the ambient air. Like vehicular air pollution, Rasmi Saab has mentioned, vehicular pollution is one of the major contributor of pollution in all over India, especially in Delhi. You see, Delhi, when the CPCB we have started the work, there were only 5 lakhs of vehicles. Now, Delhi, we have the 120 lakhs of vehicles. Out of that, about 85 lakhs vehicles are on road. So, this is a very severe problem created by these vehicles. And the reason, there are many reasons are there. Although we have introduced Bharat Stage 6 standards, we have introduced the electric vehicles are coming in the country. But the old vehicles, the vehicles which are on road are creating a lot of air pollution problem.
Right.
Because the PUC system which we have is not very effective at all. So these are some of the reasons which cause various air pollution problem, and we must take a integrated approach to control the air
address
pollution.
the problem. Mr. Suri, when we talk about the air pollution problem, AQI, Air Quality Index, is a term which is most widely used. Can you please tell us about this air quality index?
AQ index, you know, the national AQ index was constituted in 2014 by this government, central government, under Swachh Bharat scheme. And different countries, I believe, they have different AQI indexes. Whereas in India, you have 8 pollutants which are there in AQI, you know,
Right.
which tell you about the health of the air. You know, you have carbon monoxide there, sulfur dioxide and stuff like that. But you know, when we come to a bigger issue, let me tell you, there was a study done by IIT Kanpur in 2015 stressing how diesel has emerged as one of the biggest pollutant.
Professor Guleria, talking about air pollution, generally we have come across 2 types of air pollution, indoor air pollution and outdoor air pollution. What is the difference between indoor and outdoor air pollution?
So indoor and outdoor air pollution are two very important.
And how dangerous both of these pollution are for the
Both
health
of them
the
are
people?
dangerous.
Yeah.
If you look at the data that you were talking of, the Lancet study, it had shown that almost 1.24 million people are dying every year in India because of indoor and outdoor air pollution. Indoor air pollution is something which we see more in rural India, which is basically because of biomass exposure. And we see a lot of young women who come with problems of indoor air pollution, and that is because of cooking inside the house when one is using chula, and the room is not properly ventilated, and that leads to the lady cooking, and sometimes the young child who's also playing out there, inhaling very high toxic substances. And as was mentioned, it's been shown now that the smoke which is produced by the inefficient combustion of cow dung, wood, which is used in this as far as indoor cooking is concerned using the chula, It has benzene, it has PAH, it has various other substances which are carcinogenic. There is data which has come from abroad but also from India, which has looked at non-smoking lung cancer and shown that in women who develop lung cancer, there is a higher, the numbers were higher in those who had been exposed to biomass fuel in early life. So they start cooking at a very early life, in their teens, young girls start cooking in rural India. And this is a problem which is still relevant, because despite a lot of effort, we still find that almost 60% of houses in India use biomass to cook. And that means that using wood, cow dung and other substances, and this leads to a lot of smoke inside. And this is a problem of the developing world. So whatever solutions we have to find, whatever research we have to do it in our own setup, because biomass is something which exposure occurs more in the developing world. In urban areas where there is more of vehicular traffic, where there is a lot of other things like construction, road dust, we have the problem of ambient air pollution, which is the outdoor air pollution.
Right.
So in India, if you look at data both from various sources of indoor and outdoor air pollution, the bulk of the exposure that is occurring is in central and north India, both for indoor and outdoor air pollution. And the Indo-Gangetic belt is paying a huge price as far as the health of women are concerned, health of young people are concerned, both when they are inside in rural India and when they are outside in urban India. So it's a major problem, and I feel that in many ways this is a sort of a medical emergency. We need to really act fast, because a lot of people who are young right now will pay the price 15-20 years from now, when they will start having chronic respiratory problems because of constant exposure to high levels of pollution, not only during this winter, but for many winters which has been happening over the last few years and will continue to happen. So we always worry about the acute effect of pollution, that we have a very high AQI, it goes in the severe range. We're very concerned because the air looks bad. But what about people who've been living in this environment with poor air quality index for years and have grown up in this environment?
Absolutely.
It's affecting their lung and their health, and the price they will pay 15-20 years from now is going to be huge.
And in some cases, the ill effects on the health are immediate, and in some cases it is prolonged.
It's chronic.
Yeah.
So we focus a lot on the acute effects of pollution when we talk of worsening of asthma, like I said, emergency visits. But we need to really seriously think of the long-term effects also which will happen. It could be cancer-related, it could be heart-related. There is a paper which is from the European Heart Society which actually says that living in an environment with high levels of air pollution is as much a risk factor for heart disease as is high cholesterol, as is smoking, or as is a family history of heart disease. So what it means is that if you're living in an environment like this, we're adding a risk factor for heart attacks in later life.
Absolutely.
So that is something we need to keep in mind.
In the audience also, if there is someone who wants to ask some question, let him please ask first.
ऊंचे मकानों, लंबी गाड़ियों, बड़े कारखानों, ऊंचे मकानों, लंबी गाड़ियों, बड़े कारखानों, अंधविश्वासों और स्वार्थों से मेरा घर घिर गया है। कुछ लोग मेरे हिस्से का सूरज और हवा खा गए। अभी सर दिवाली से कुछ दिन पहले मैं अपने एक कजन से बात कर रहा था कि इस दिवाली फटाके नहीं फोड़ते हैं। उसने कहा कि मेरे ना फोड़ने से क्या होगा, क्या पॉल्यूशन कम हो जाएगा। तो मेरा प्रश्न सर आपसे यह है कि जब बूंद बूंद से घड़ा भर सकता है तो बूंद बूंद निकालने से घड़ा खाली क्यों नहीं हो सकता। क्या यह इंडिविजुअल सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी हमारी नहीं है कि हम अपने स्तर पर पॉल्यूशन को कम करें, चाहे वो घर पर हो, व्हीकल यूज करने में हो, गैस चूल्हा यूज करने में हो।
Dr. Sengupta, I would like you to answer this question. And apart from this, stubble burning has been also said that it is also contributing to air pollution, but it has been on since ages. I mean, like crackers, Diwali, this has been celebrated and done, bursting of crackers. It has been done since years. But what other factors have contributed to the this aggravated air problem?
You see, if you take the NCR, Delhi regions, there are some other very major sources. For example, Delhi NCR region, there are 13 coal-based power stations are located, where there is no control on SO2 and NOx. These two pollutants are coming from the coal burning. They are controlling only particulate matter. And due to that, this sulfur dioxide and oxides of nitrogen which are emitted by the 13 coal-based power stations due to the atmospheric condition, they are converted to sulfate and nitrate and became part of the PM 2.5. This is the one reason. Second reason is that there are thousands of brick kilns are there, where the control, air pollution control things are unregulated. They are not, they don't take any consent from the pollution control board. They don't follow the rules, and they are polluting they are creating lot of air pollution problems. This second source. Third source is the large number of vehicles and then agriculture residue burning. Now, why the agriculture residue burning become now so important? Because in past, before 2008, there was 2008, the Punjab government has made a rule that the stowing of this paddy crop should be made after June because they want to conserve the water. So they are not allowing the water to be drawn for paddy fields before June 8.
Right.
So that date they are fixed. So these all the paddy cultivation is happening during October, November, and they have to cut the straw before to put the new field. And what is happening to that? In past they used the labor to cut it. So then when labor used to cut it, they cut the whole straw. But now they are using the machines, and machines are leaving about 2 foot of the straw on the ground. And to clear the ground in a hurry, they put the fire. So these are all happening after 2008 and 9. They
Right.
started, and all the air pollution problem are aggravated in NCR region from that period only. So this is the man-made situation.
Right. Mr. Suri, where does the knowledge gaps lie when it comes to understanding the role of individual in the air pollution problem? Individual's role in the air pollution problem?
I think ultimately it's up to the individual, people who are living in, whether they are in residential colonies or in the villages, to understand the value of cleanliness, how to dispose of waste, because unless there is a mobilization of people, unless we as a society, as members of society, we rise up to the occasion and we just do not leave everything to our political masters, things are not going to improve, because at the end of the day, most of the political governments, the thing which I've been harping in this show, they're only bothered about their vote banks.
Coming to you, Professor Guleria, when we talk about air pollution, we have generally spotted people wearing masks. This is something like it has become a trend nowadays when the air pollution levels are high. How effective are these masks in combating this air pollution problem? And are there any benchmarks while designing these masks?
So first of all, in my opinion, masks are more for reassurance. We need to find a more comprehensive solution, as we've been saying. And to find a comprehensive solution, there has to be involvement both from each citizen, policymakers, scientists, all have to get together and look at the source, see how can we decrease that, what can we do as an individual to decrease our carbon footprint, what can we do to decrease air pollution. And I believe that is possible if we are very active. If you go back to the late 90s, we had a huge problem of pollution which was related to the buses, and CNG came in. And that really did help in decreasing pollution. But we never really continued to work on looking at the ongoing problem, and we've reached a situation which is like the pre-CNG era. So there has to be an effort which is more than just trying to wear masks. The problem with masks is that for the masks which are available, the N95 mask, the N99 mask, N95 and N99 mean that the N95 will be able to take care of 95% of PM 2.5. But to wear an N95 mask, and we use N95 masks also when we are looking at managing patients in our ICU who have very severe infection which they can transmit to another individual. It is used a lot during the H1N1 pandemic, the swine flu pandemic, because of the droplet infection which can happen. And there it is something that is mandatory. But people who really wear this N95 or N99 mask, you have to wear it very tightly so that whatever air that you breathe in goes through the filter.
Right.
And then only will it be able to provide you the protection. It's very difficult to wear that mask for a very long time. And secondly, most people wear masks loosely. And when you breathe in, you suck air inside your lungs. And if you have the resistance less from the side of the mask, a lot of air will move in from the side of the mask without going through the filter into your lungs. And you will still be breathing air which has pollution rather than actually that going through the filter.
Filter.
So the efficacy of these masks is not that much. It's difficult for people to wear it for long. It gives them a feeling of reassurance. Some people who are at high risk, like asthmatics, bronchitis patients or with heart failure, it may help them. But again, I feel that that is not the long-term sustainable solution. We really need to look at how can we find a solution. And I do agree with you, we need to have everyone involved. We started what we called the Green School Initiative, and we did that with Delhi University, with Venkateshwar College. We had students going to different colleges, different schools. 10,000 children we covered more than 30 schools. And I see that there is a lot of enthusiasm in children and the young generation to really do something. We encourage them to have carpools, to come by school bus, not come by individual cars, walk to the market rather than taking the vehicle, encourage their parents to do the same. And there was a lot of support as far as the young generation and children were concerned. We need to use that as a movement to really influence all citizens to start decreasing the level of pollution they are causing. We need to work on waste management, but that is also very important. My daughter is basically an environmental engineer, and she has made us all segregate our waste. But the problem is when we segregate it and give it to the person outside, he will mix it all and give it again. So we have to increase awareness that even if you segregate waste, you make sure that till the end it is actually taken in a proper manner. So if households do it, it's the responsibility subsequently of people who are collecting the waste to also be able to take it to the very end. So these are things that we really need to work on. And I think if we work in a combined manner, we should be able to manage this problem that we have.
And in the audience also, we have a number of students and youngsters. I would like to come to Sia, who is just 11 years old, and as an individual, she has taken a big initiative when the environment pollution and the air pollution is concerned.
So I actually read this time of the year a lot. So I have wheezing and nose blockage and all, and this is a very tough time for me. So now I was just walking on the road, and then I saw a person sitting in a car with his AC on. He was not even moving. He was just sitting in the car with his engine on and pollution coming out. And it was winters. So then I went to the car and asked him, "Sir, first of all, it's winters, and then why do you have the AC on? Second thing, that with the AC, along with the AC, the engine is also on, and that is producing smoke. So why are you doing this?" And then he said, "Who cares? Everyone does it. Don't you see it? Don't you see anyone doing it?" And then I was shocked.
Initiatives by the youngsters is something which the country also is eyeing on.
Get the
concept
involved.
of New India, which Prime Minister Modi is also emphasizing on, is something which
I would want all the young generation to actually start a movement, and what she's done, everyone should do that.
At least question that why, what. Yes.
So, according to SAFA report, the road dust plays a lion's share contribution in Delhi's air pollution. Then after comes to the autos, the tempos. Then domestic reasons are there. Then after we have vehicular pollution like the cars. The odd even rolling out odd even rule won't even help us in the long run. Why can't we have the taxes
some
like when
solution you are looking for,
like the Western European countries in the cities where industrial revolution took place? Their air quality is much more better than Delhi, though we don't have large scale industrial industries in our city. Why can't we levy carbon tax and high tax as they are doing to curb pollution?
Mr. Rashmi, on adding to what just he mentioned, China has drastically come down when it comes to air pollution levels. According to the survey conducted by Air Visual in the recent, which I just mentioned, in terms of PM 2.5, Khotan in China is at the 8th position. So, what are the lessons we can learn from China specifically and implement it in the country?
Chinese have improved quite a lot. In fact, Chinese cities were also quite polluted, like Delhi and other cities in our country at one point of time. But Chinese have definitely invested in this. For example, Beijing, before the Olympics took place in Beijing, Beijing had very high levels of pollution. But over the last 10, 15 to 20 years, the Chinese government has invested a lot.
And among the top 10 polluted cities in the world, China is just at the 8th position. I'm like, Gurugram is topping the chart.
Yeah, true. So there is absolutely no denying the fact that our cities are heavily polluted. And if we compare ourselves with China and other countries, we are, of course, not doing so well. We need to invest. Essentially, the question is we need to invest in the waste management system, segregation of waste, handling the waste, and minimizing the emissions into the air. Emissions of all kinds, whether they come from the landfills, whether they come from vehicles, or come from the road dust, or whatever. In fact, the road dust or construction dust, which you have mentioned, they generate basically PM10, larger microns. So they are also equally, they cause impact, adverse impact on the health. But the greater danger is that of PM2.5, which Dr. Guleria has been just mentioning this. So we are currently focusing our attention on PM2.5 and other emissions which are deadly in nature. So the emissions from all sources, vehicles, we know the sources, vehicles, agricultural residues, landfills, and general waste management. So we need to focus our attention on these things. Things have started, but definitely it needs a lot of resources. And I, more than resources at times I feel, it is the systems that we need to create. Like Dr. Guleria was mentioning, we need to create a segregation system at source. And that has to be carried right till the end. And the municipal administration has to invest in keeping that waste segregated. That needs resources. That needs incentivization. People have to be paid for it. That resources has to come. And in fact, if we involve the private sector, people who know how to generate wealth out of it, they will be able to do it, provided we involve in this.
In fact, individuals' role is also very important and critical.
But individuals is extremely important, but individual can only change one's behavior. That needs education and awareness. What the materials management, the waste management needs is creation of wealth out of waste, treating waste as wealth. And that needs a business model. Where we need to involve private sector.
Right. Coming to you, Dr. Sengupta, there has also been a proposal to put big air purifiers in metro cities. Can these purifiers address the massive problem of air pollution?
My experience in CPCB was that this type of air purifier at the ambient air level will not work. It is a highly energy intensive thing. And if you see the carbon footprint of the running of this air purifier, big air purifier, is very large. And the local area it can. It will suck the air, remove the particles and release the clean air. But the total area it will cover is very less. So I don't think it will be effective to put the air purifier to clean the air. We have to take a integrated approach, identify the source and do the corrective measures for all the things that technology is available with us, and we can do it. It is not a rocket science to control of pollution. We require some very sophisticated equipment or very sophisticated technology. Nothing. All the technology and equipments are available with us. Only we have to do it.
Right. Mr. Suri, what comprehensive action plan is required to combat this emanating problem?
I think this action plan should involve, like Dr. Rashmi said, private involvement of private parties. That is something very important. We cannot leave everything to the government. But at the same time, a single individual may be too powerless to do something on his own. And I'll tell you, in many places, the governments now are opening up to private participation, say in places like Africa. In the last 15-20 years, for wildlife management, a lot of private companies have been roped in, and it has been a major success, that the wildlife has gone up. I mean, it may not have to do directly with pollution, but how those things are changing the African wildlife landscape.
Right.
Similarly, in places like Brazil and in many other European countries, a lot of private, there's a lot of private, public-private cooperation. Something on these lines have to be included in India, because don't forget that, our industries are now some of the best industries in the world. We have like people who are in the Forbes list of, top 100, top 1000. All these people, all these industries, I mean, people from here should be roped in, and they should be helping the government rather than we just looking up to the government to save the day for us, because that is not going to be the
Right.
permanent solution.
Right. Dr. Guleria, what are the radical steps required as far as the health and the immediate relief is concerned?
So the radical steps are to really have a source control. It's causing problems every year. And I think we need to have a sustainable plan. Every year in winter we discuss the issue, and by March we forget about it and then come back again. So that is not a solution. We need to look at what can we do 1 year down the line, 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. Set some targets, what are our targets, how much do we want the AQI to improve, and then work on that by a good strategy which involves all stakeholders. It should also have a public-private partnership, but that is very, very important. What we have each year is a knee-jerk reaction, where when the levels become very high, we start something or the other. It could be odd even, it could be the Supreme Court coming in and trying to do something, but that's not going to work as a long-term solution. So the source, how do we contain the source? And there is a lot of data available at an international level. What we are seeing today is not new. We've had the London smog in the 50s. We've had high levels of pollution in Los Angeles. They were able to solve the problem. We need to see what they did. Our solutions have to be different because our sources are different. But we need to look at how technology can help us, how we can increase awareness, how we can get everyone to get involved in trying to help. And when we're talking of pollution, I think we focus a lot on Delhi. But a lot of cities, like you mentioned, are in the top, which are also not only Delhi, but surrounding part. And we need to have a comprehensive solution for the entire region rather than just looking at one city.
Right. And in the audience, if anybody, yes, your name?
Ma'am Harshpreet,
Yeah.
my question is to Dr. Suri sir only. Sir, you are talking about stubble burning. Like, I'm a daughter of a farmer.
Okay.
And I asked my father, like, what do you do, why you do stubble burning only? So he said, like, we see the industry is falling, agriculture industry is falling, farmers are in distress. So it is cost efficient for them to, just burn the stubble. So what alternative you suggest for stubble burning?
I'll tell you, in many places what I've read is that this stubble in many states, they're actually being used for a lot of other purposes. It can be a good food for the cattle. But here, I believe, in Punjab and Haryana, stubble burning is a necessity because in October you have to clear the fields, because you have to keep the ground ready for your next fasal that comes in December. But here, I believe the state government should chip in and should help the farmers. And my point is, like Dr. Rishmi also raised, that about 10 years ago, this problem was not so severe because farmers would use laborers to cut the stubble, and it would be cut very efficiently. Not a trace of it would be left on the ground, so no smoke would come out, at least not to the extent that it would reach Delhi and other cities. But now the farmers, probably because, incentives and profit is uppermost on their mind. So they have to, usko jaldi mein aapko kaatna hai. That's why the farmers are using tractors and other mechanical devices.
But sir, they are not getting the money for what they are selling. How can, they are, hungry about the incentives and profits only? Like, we are not getting money for about the past year's, fasal, and how can we expect that we are getting the profits?
On that question, I'll take all the panelists' reaction. Dr. Sengupta.
Very good question. And how the farmers will get benefit. This stubble has some values also. Number one, you can mix this stubble with the molasses, which is a byproduct or waste from the sugar industry. Then it will be very good at cattle feed. And in Punjab, Haryana, so many cattle feed is required, number one. Number two, what government is thinking, collect this stubble, bale it, and it has good calorific value. It can be used for power generation.
Right.
And for your information, NTPC is planning 2 power stations in that area, in Punjab, Haryana, to use this stubble from the next 2 years. They will use all the stubbles, bale it, compact it and use as a partial fuel in their power plant to run the bijli, generate the power. So that will partially solve the problem. Government is very active on this and they understand the problem and actions are being taken. I hope that after 2-3 years, this problem will be minimized. Not will totally go, it will be minimized.
Professor Guleria?
Yeah, so same thing, what you're very right. Unless you have an incentive and something that the farmer can get out of it, he will not do anything else except for using a matchstick and to burn the stubble. So we have to find a way that the stubble can be used profitably and he can do it, and there are mechanisms which are being worked out. There are also mechanisms can we use the stubble to go into the soil, and that becomes part of making the soil more healthy in terms of manure. And can we do that with an incentive? There has to be some incentive and the farmer has to feel that there is benefit out of not burning the stubble rather than a loss, because if he doesn't do that, fines will not work, legislation will not work. We have to look at a practical solution. Therefore, your point is very true, and I think there is a thinking of how to find a solution for that.
To it. Mr. Rashmi?
I fully empathize with your father. He's absolutely right. I mean, we can't put the blame on the farmers for the pollution or for burning of the agricultural residues because they have no option. I mean, they have to sow the next crop, so they have to clear the fields. But there are some solutions which are available. Technology is available. Essentially, we have to involve the industry into this, because the people who can actually use this stubble for productive purposes, they have to be involved in this, and that has not been done so far. What has been done so far is I think the government has subsidized procurement of happy seeders. You must be knowing this. The happy seeders are used in the fields to plow it and then mulch, mix the stubble with the soil. But that doesn't really solve the problem fundamentally, because you are temporarily solving the problem by applying the happy seeders. But what do the happy seeders do the rest of the year? Happy seeder is a very costly equipment. It can be used for 20 days, but rest of the year it is lying idle. No farmer would like to invest in this. Even if we have a business model where some industrialists procure the equipments and give it on rent, again the industrialists will have nothing to do with that equipment. So we have to find productive solutions there, and the solutions are available. Industry definitely needs to be involved. Industry will be able to find uses, either in paper industry or in with molasses.